On behalf of the Department of Education and Skills, I'm truly delighted to attend the National Conference on Guidance and to formally recognise the continuation of the National Forum on Guidance for 2013-2014. In particular, I would like to welcome the Chair of the National Centre for Guidance and Education, Barra O'Brien, our guest speakers from the European Union, Koen Nomdem, Suzanne Kratz, Reino Vuorinen of European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network, Jennifer McKenzie, Director of the NCGE, and indeed all the guest speakers. I'm very pleased to note that the Forum members represent guidance providers and practitioners across all sectors of education and the labour market in Ireland. And also a very special thank you to the Choir of St. Patrick's for their wonderful singing and music. As you know, Ireland holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union until the end of June this year. This, in fact, is our seventh time to have the honour of holding the presidency as we celebrate indeed our 40th year as member of the European Union. We won't hold the presidency again for another 16 years, so I would say to all those who are suffering the nightmares of overburdening, it won't come around again in your time. It is our aim in the presidency to promote the theme of our presidency, which is jobs, stability and growth. And it is also our aim to seek ways of supporting sustainable jobs and growth in Europe and to restore economic stability to the European Union economy. Education and training are essential, in our view, to achieving these aims. I've recently chaired the EU Council of Education Ministers in Brussels, where we adopted the conclusion of a document entitled Rethinking Education Communication. And I'm delighted to see that there will be presentations from the Commission outlining the details of this communication by Koen Nomdem. I also know that the youth employment package being considered at European level will be described to you later on by Suzanne Kratz. Through my attendance at meetings of European education ministers, I'm very aware of the challenge facing governments everywhere in lowering youth unemployment. I'm also aware that at a time when 23% of Europe's young people are out of work, there are 2 million vacancies across the EU that simply cannot be filled. We must and need to address this mismatch very urgently. Last year, the government here published a document entitled Pathways to Work, a blueprint to increase the employability of job seekers and encourage them to be more active in their efforts to find work. As part of this commitment, the government has decided to radically reform and restructure further education and training into a simply world-class system. It must provide courses that are particularly relevant to the needs of school leavers and the unemployed. It must also help people shape their careers as we recover from the economic and social crisis of recent years in this country. Guidance clearly has a very important role to play in bridging this gap. It is vital to enable students, graduates, and the unemployed to make effective career choices. Governments across Europe have to prove to their electorates, firstly, that we have credible answers for dealing with the crisis now, the worst since the 1930s. Secondly, that we have a vision for the future. Thirdly, that we can create more jobs or create the conditions within which more jobs can be created. Fourthly, that we can grow our economy. Fifth, that we can at the same time improve living standards for all of our people. And finally, that we can build a brighter future for our children. We have to show that our policies are about improving the lives of all of our people. That is why I am, and will continue to be, a strong advocate for continuing investment in education. And mine is not a lone voice. It is shared by many of you here today, and your presence is all the more welcome for that. But while we will protect education to the greatest extent possible, the reality is that we still have to make savings. One change, as you all know in this room, that I made last year was to alter the way that guidance counsellors are allocated to second-level schools. Since last September, guidance posts at post-primary level, or second level, are no longer allocated to any school on an ex-quota basis. That is, in addition to the allocation to the school that they would normally receive based the allocation of teachers to the school that would normally be based on the pupil-teacher ratio. Guidance provision is now being organised by school management from within the staffing schedule allocation. In this way, principals have discretion to balance guidance needs with the pressures to provide subject choice as well. I want to pay tribute to the school's management agencies, the ACCS, the IVEA, JMB and the NAPD, who are represented here today, for the way in which they have addressed this difficult budget measure. They collaborated on the development of a framework for schools which emphasised the need and benefits of a whole school approach. This was, in my view, a very positive and proactive response to the difficulties that the budget decision entailed. I welcome the fact that they consulted with the NCGE and others to ensure inclusion of the appropriate policies on whole school guidance planning. In the light of concerns expressed last year, the Department requested the NCGE to carry out a review of school provision for guidance. The NCGE surveyed schools in March of last year before the budget measure was introduced and the following October after its introduction. The final report will be published in the coming months, but initial findings have been presented to the Department in preparation for this conference. Initial findings would suggest that schools continue to prioritise the guidance programme. The report also says there has been increased group work and class-based activity at senior cycle. That's between the ages of 15 and 18. This is in keeping with the best practice in guidance. Such best practice suggests that one-to-one guidance counselling is best conducted after such group work. Yes, there have been some reductions in the number of guidance hours available to schools, but certainly not of the order as some have claimed. Schools, as I said, continue to provide and indeed to prioritise guidance. For example, in terms of hours, the NCGE survey suggests that there has been a reduction of approximately 25% in allocated hours for guidance. The actual reduction depends largely on school size, and it is as follows. 4 hours a week, on average, in second-level schools with less than 400 students. These schools typically would have had a part-time guidance counsellor under the old guidance allocation system. 5 hours a week reduction on average in second-level schools with between 400 and 700 pupils. These schools typically would have had one full-time guidance counsellor under the old allocation system. And there was an 11.5 hours a week reduction in large schools with over 700 students. These schools typically would have had more than one guidance counsellor under the allocation system. The 35% response rate to the survey was similar to that from the parallel survey published by the Institute of Guidance Counsellors, with which you would be familiar. I am heartened to see confirmation of what I have been hearing both from the NCGE and from schools on the ground. And that message is very clearly, guidance continues to be a priority in all of our schools. And in fact, the whole school guidance approach, which has been recommended by the Department and the NCGE since 2004 as a model of best practice, is being utilised more and more. It is clear that schools are responding appropriately to the new allocation model. For example, one respondent said, and I quote, "The difficulties present an opportunity for the school to reassess the delivery of the whole school guidance programme and to allow, most importantly in my view, other members of staff to ease the burden of the guidance counsellor." In the evidence-based handbook Guidance Case Studies, which has been launched here today, the importance of whole school guidance planning is emphasised. This approach reflects the department policy. I am glad to see the case studies in the handbook have endorsed this approach. As one guidance counsellor remarked, guidance is now identified as a whole school issue, and this is hugely important and motivational as each staff member becomes aware of the impact they make on the vocational, personal, social and career developments of the students in their care. Of course, guidance extends just beyond what happens in post-primary schools. And I therefore want to acknowledge and indeed pay tribute to the work many of you here today do across all levels of our education system. You all have a vital role to play in supporting individuals into and through and in progressing on from education in the world of work, a world that is rapidly changing. I would like to take a moment to focus on these other areas of your sector, namely adult, further and higher education. The Department of Education and Skills is committed to the provision of guidance for adult learners to support them back into education, to enhance their job seeking and higher education opportunities. The Adult Education Guidance Initiative has consistently provided quality information and guidance services to adults returning to and progressing through second chance education. I know that this will continue into the future. Within the higher education sector, last summer, I launched the Springboard Guidance Telephone Helpline, staffed by qualified guidance counsellors to support unemployed graduates and experienced workers in their decisions to apply for the Springboard courses nationally. The higher education institutions and universities provide guidance for third-level students to support their transition through college and into the world of work. I would like to formally recognise the Career Advice Services for their commitment to working in collaboration with their college colleagues to develop guidance practice in the third-level sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the events earlier this week, where the NCGE hosted a two-day Euro Guidance Network meeting on Monday and Tuesday, followed by the 12th plenary meeting of the ELGPN on Wednesday and Thursday, reflects Ireland's focus on guidance during our European Union presidency. The work of the forum over the next 2 years will focus on testing the ELGPN European Resource Kit within the Irish context by looking at issues such as quality assurance and evidence-based practice in guidance provision. Can I say to all of you here, as you begin your progress today, that I would like to acknowledge once again the work of the ELGPN under Dr. Bourvarin and our European colleagues. The information gathered in Ireland can be informed by the testing of this resource kit across 31 ELGPN member states. Evidence-based practice will help those of us responsible for policy making and, more importantly, for allocating funding to make informed decisions into the future. I wish you all well in your deliberations throughout the course of the rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed.